Complacency is the enemy. Compassion is the catalyst. They call it troublemaking. We call it the blueprint. Welcome to the Unapologetic Disruptor for Good, the podcast for the restless, the relentless, and the ones too loud to be ignored. We aren't asking for permission to change the world. We're just doing it. My name is Matthew Portel, and I am the host of the Unapologetic Disruptor for Good podcast. Let's get uncomfortable. Well, here we are again for another episode. We are up to 2.4 in the relaunch of the Unapologetic Disruptor for Good podcast. And man, I have just been so excited to be back and talking to incredible people, sharing incredible information with folks that can take ideas and walk straight into schools, classrooms, businesses, corporations, organizations, and do something a little bit differently. And I know that doesn't sound very disruptive, but let me tell you, it is. It's very disruptive and disruptive in not a bad way. I know that there's some people, especially my friends on the other side of the world, that word disruption makes people kind of uncomfortable. And in the words of myself to the staff, to the staff at my school, we are going to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And that doesn't mean unsafe. That means it's okay to be uncomfortable, where we're pushing our paradigms, where we're evaluating our thinking, where we're processing our experiences, and we're saying, okay, what's getting in the way of being better or doing it differently or meeting the need of whomever. And so that's what this podcast is really about. And it's so great to be back and to have so many great people to be in conversation with. I just checked before I clicked live on this podcast to see, I wonder how many streams we are up to. And we are rapidly approaching 300,000. We are 280 plus thousand streams. And that's not actually all of them. That's just where the one platform that I'm tracking. And so I would say we're safely over 300,000, but I can't prove that without the data that I have. So 280,000 streams, you all. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for sharing, interacting, reviewing, liking, all of that good stuff. Because at the end of the day, the reason that we do this podcast is I don't get paid. I don't have any advertising from this. I'm not making a single nickel. And that's why, because that's not what this is about, is colleagues, friends, change makers, fellow disruptors from across the globe believe in the work that we all do so strongly that we want to put it out there so people can either have an entry point or even push their ideas further than they may have already started by simply just being a part of this movement. And so thank you again for listening. And I know without a doubt that tonight is going to be incredible because our guest tonight, I confidently and happily say is a friend, a colleague, a thought partner. Julie Kurtz is a renowned author and national speaker. She specializes in trauma-responsive, social and emotional, and resilient building skills, particularly with educational settings ranging from early childhood to 12th grade. As the founder and the CEO of the Center for Optimal Brain Integration, Julie is dedicated and to amplify the voices of those who have been and experienced toxic or traumatic stress, empowering both children and adults, and the nurturing human beings through intentional social and emotional learning and resilient strategies. Here's the cool part. She is a co-author of 6 and soon to be 7 books on trauma, toxic stress, and resilience, and an award-winning children's book that we are going to talk about today. So 2 of those 7 books, I get to proudly say that my name is next to her on those. So Julie, welcome to the podcast. Welcome back. This is not your first time. Welcome back. How have you been? Tell us a little bit more about what you've been up to.
I've been good, just doing the stuff that gives me joy and passion, which is giving every child a voice, giving every child and adult who's experienced toxic or traumatic stress a voice. That is really my sole purpose on this planet, because I think my own journey has been healing my own And at the same time, simultaneously wanting to give back. That's the joy. That's the passion.
And that's exactly right. And I think all of us who are in this work have come to this work either because of our own journey, knowing or not knowing it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that I've shared my story 1,000 times. I came into this journey really thinking it was about other people, only to realize, like now that I've paused and understand the neurology and the physiology and the science, and wait, this my dad had severe PTSD from war, and and all of these things, and so it became something I thought I was trying to learn about from other people, and ultimately impacting my own journey and my own process of, you know what, now I get it, I understand, right? And so I 100% connect to that. Let's jump into this because I got this incredible children's friendly best human brain books of all time winner from the Book Authority, Understanding My Brain Becoming Human.
Humane, I say. Human or
Exactly.
humane, yeah.
But that isn't that so powerful. And I think about this from a principal's perspective. And when I was looking through it, and it's going through not only the impact or the function of the brain, but it's calling them by name. It's talking about flight, fight, and freeze. It's teaching kids about their amygdala. It's talking to what do I do? Tell me more about this incredible book and how it came about, and
Oh.
how has it been used?
I have to tell you that I was on a trip to the far northern California called Humboldt, where they have beautiful, stunning redwoods, and we were on vacation. And let's do a hike today. So we're doing how about 5 miles we'll do? And it was a rainy day, cold. We had big jackets on. I'm ready to go on this hike. Not 5 miles is nothing. And we got lost. And it turned into like a 10-mile journey. And we had to cross a creek. And my husband is a very avid outdoorsman. And he just hops on the wet, mossy rocks. And I slip and fall, and I'm just sopping wet. And I have 5 more miles that I have to go on this journey. And I have something called Raynaud's, which is white fingers and toes when I'm cold. So in order to survive this, I'm making it sound like I had to survive being in the jungle. But in order to cope, I should say, I had to leave my body, right? And what I did was I spent that time creating this book. So that's the history of the book. I also really felt pulled many, many years to do something for kids because I love the brain. When we understand the brain, we understand why we act the way we act, and we understand we become navigators of our own nervous system and others. So I wrote this book, and in a nutshell, Matthew, Lizzie the lizard plays the hind survival brain and teaches kids about that red hind survival brain and how it's designed to keep us alive on the planet. It gives us sensations. It speaks the language, Matthew's showing. It speaks the language of sensations, and it makes us have a stomach ache when we have too much stress. It makes us shaky. It makes us mobilize our sensations quickly, dilate our pupils, increase our blood pressure, our body temperature, to swerve out of the way when we get cut off. But it also makes us fight, flight, freeze, faint, flock, and fawn and we only teach the kids the fight, flight, freeze because it's elementary age. When we are in real danger, which we need. Thank you, Lizzie the lizard brain. However, when our emotional buttons are pushed and Elsie the elephant plays the limbic brain, which we teach kids, that's where we're neurobiologically wired for connection. We want to be seen and loved and belong and be a part of groups. But this is where our calm, small, medium, and large emotions are. And so then we teach kids, Malcolm the meerkat plays the amygdala. The amygdala sits inside our emotional brain when our emotions get big, when the emotions get pushed, when stress levels rise up. The amygdala goes off, and what does it do, Matthew? It wakes up the Lizzie the lizard brain, and sometimes can make us hurt others, ourselves, or things around us. And I promise I'll get to the top of the brain now. And then we teach kids, Ozzy the owl teaches them about, and by the way, Elsie the elephant really teaches them about emotions, a lot of emotional literacy. how to identify sensations in your body and uses a thermometer to talk about the size of them. Then when we get up to the prefrontal cortex, Ozzy Dale says, hey, look, y'all need a brain where all parts are talking to one another, because when only one part's taking over, that's when you can do harm. That's when you can have dysregulated behaviors, and dysregulated behaviors is okay until you hurt others, yourself, or things around you. So y'all, all our parts need to talk to one another. And I'm coming in to tell you how to build a toolkit of strategies to help you stay calm, feel safer, and regulate big feelings so you don't do those things. And so the whole book is to teach kids how to listen to every part. Like, hey, I know I feel like punching you in the face right now, but I got big feelings, but I'm going to do some things that are going to help me so that I can bring my prefrontal cortex online. I'm going to say one more thing. Did you know? I know you know this because you know everything, but 90% of
I wish.
I'm preaching to the choir because we've written books about this. 90% of the time, your prefrontal cortex, the thinking, reasoning, listening, focusing, problem solving, empathic brain shuts down when you have stress. For all of us, that means we need to learn how to bring our Ozzy the Owl cortex back online when we're stressed, so we can act more humane. Anyhow, that's the short of the book. I didn't want to go on too long, but I want to give you a little summary.
No, listen, this podcast is about hearing from you, not from me. And I will tell you how incredibly connective this is and how quickly children can pick this up. I have learned in my work with children that children tend to pick these type of ideas up much quicker than we do as adults, right? Because their paradigms are not as deeply established, and then we're not challenging their core beliefs. And I when we were talking before we jumped on the podcast, I said, man, just this last couple weeks, we've noticed that when we get a new student, especially in our older grade, well, actually only in our older grades, we were seeing some negative social interactions happening every time we had a new student. And as I told you before, we're getting 10, 12, 15 new students almost every week, right? And that means some students are high mobility, so they're leaving, and we're getting other students. Nonetheless, I actually did a community gathering with my fifth grade all of the students and the teachers. And I began to talk to them about what happens when we enter a new social environment. And then I started talking about the brain. And then I started talking about what happens when you feel stress. And we talked about the amygdala and the limbic system. And what happens when a new student walks into a school and people aren't kind, or they're trying to figure out, or they literally just walk into a school. None of that could impact them. And it's still so challenging for anyone, a teacher, a principal, a student, to walk into a new school and allow their brain to allow them to be at that high functioning prefrontal cortex, because it is stressful. Right. And I was watching kids, and there was actually one student, they began to tear up. And it wasn't because they were feeling guilty or anything, is I could see it was connecting with them so deeply that they were making connections of like, oh yeah. And I asked the students, what questions do you have? And do you know what they asked about? They didn't ask about anything other than their brains. Right. And so that to me opens that door of, okay, now our students are ready. Right. And I could see the adults thinking, and I've been very frank, we are just starting our journey really in my second year of the school that I'm leading, because it takes that long. This isn't something you come in and say, this is what we're doing. Here's what it is. This is what the brain does. Although we know it's fact. And myself, when I learned it immediately, I'm like, oh my goodness, I have to do something differently immediately. Right. I'm an activator. That isn't the way everybody operates. So it is building this over time. But I thought, man, if I would have had this with me at that time, a month or two ago, I would have been like, let me read this. Let me read this to you. And let's talk about thermometers. Let's talk about what happens when. And again, I'm not going to talk the whole time, but I have to say this too, because I just shared this. I wish I would have had this in a meeting that I had with a parent and this is very common, and I've heard it for the decade that I've been a principal. I tell my child to defend themselves. I hear it all the time. If something happens at school, defend yourself. And I began to talk about the brain and what we're giving our children, what door we're opening for our 8, 9, 10, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds. Is that when we say defend yourself, that means that we are putting the responsibility on a child that has a developing brain to decipher what is considered a threat when we understand. And I went through the same thing I told the students with an adult. And I said, we can't put that weight on them because they don't have the skill right now to decipher if that was a bump because somebody was too close or that's a bump because somebody wants to fight me. Because if we say defend yourself, everybody's punching everybody every time somebody gets bumped. Yeah. And the parents stopped for a minute and went, I said, and at no point is there an adult that couldn't step in and say, I got you. Let's figure this out. Let's talk through it. And so I could see the light bulbs beginning to come on. Because it's important. This is how our brains work. We have to know that. So yeah, that connected to me immediately when I started looking through the book.
It is so life-changing. You said so many things. I wrote them down. One is not just new kids, but 4 things amplify stress. One is newness, unpredictability and uncertainty, not feeling like you have a voice, choice, agency, and control, not feeling isolated like you don't belong. And when you gave the example of a new student, when schools are thinking about becoming trauma responsive, which if you don't like the word trauma, just use our book name, reducing stress, being navigators of nervous systems, you're going to have kids, when you build these strategies into your school, of how you welcome new students or whatever strategies you're bringing in that we talk about, you're helping keep kids optimally regulated. A lot of times people will say, well, these trauma responsive strategies give me strategies for when kids are escalated. And I'm like, there's 4 or 5 reasons to use the strategies. One is Dr. Bruce Perry talks about multiple pathways. There's relational, which is the most powerful. Bottom of the brain, which is your hind survival brain, the fastest pathway, which is usually like repetitive somatosensory activities like movement, breathing. And then there's other pathways too. But what's so fascinating is that we don't just build it in to bring kids back. We build it in to keep them optimally regulated, which to me is building strong nervous systems. The paradigm shift, the disrupting thought today in this Unapologetic Disruptor for Good podcast is that we're moving away from the antiquated systems of punishing, blaming, shaming to get kids to behave, to moving to systems that say, we're building nervous systems that are solid and strong to prepare them for the world. That means the ability to tolerate stress, the ability to tolerate uncertainty, but by carving out pathways, people, places, objects, and activities that'll help them feel safe. And as a licensed marriage and family therapist too, I read this book to kids who are, I specialize in anxiety and they can't even function in the world. But sometimes through a book, it actually wires our brain. We have to, a lot of kids I see don't like to talk about themselves, but they like to read the book because it's about imaginary characters. And then I ask them to think of kids at school that are in their hind survival brain, or when kids at school have big feelings and when they hurt others themselves. And then they have an easier time talking about other kids and how they could use strategies and build a toolkit. And then when they can tolerate it, they can think about themselves. But the brain doesn't know the difference between real and pretend. So when a child's scared to go to the doctor and you read a book about a child who was scared to go to the doctor, but then here's what they did to cope, the brain is actually wiring neurosynaptic connectors, which is a habit of what to do when you're in a real emotional emergency. So I think the book can be another powerful pathway to build resilient nervous systems.
I agree. And we all know that modeling is so important, and adults being honest with children, students, kids. Hey, I'm feeling frustrated right now. I need a minute. I'm going to do this. I've said that 1,000 times as a principal. And I've said that this week when there's a situation and a student has to come and talk to me, which, by the way, I just want to encourage principals. If kids only come to talk to you when you're in trouble, we're doing it incorrectly. And I've started, and I did it in my previous school too, but a positive phone call home. And all I do is literally, okay, I pull tricks. I do. I actually pull a joke on parents. I pretend the kids are in trouble because that's what they expect. And just to have an opportunity to tell them that you're super proud and their kids are super awesome and thank you for trusting us and all those things. If you don't do that, do that. But nonetheless, when it isn't that situation, and I do have to engage with the student, first of all, the need for punishment and consequence is still a deep-rooted system within any school. Even the trauma-informed schools, depending on the regulation of the adult, because all of us like comfort, and sometimes comfort feels like doing what we feel safe doing as opposed to what we should do. And so I constantly am battling that. And I always use the analogy. So it's kind of like if a student comes and is struggling with reading, you want me to send them home, right? And they look at me and I say, because it's the same thing. We're trying to build the nervous systems, the strategies, the ability, the understanding when it comes to regulation, not behavior. Because this just means that there's a gap of skill. It's no different if you look down and a child is leaving off the ending of a word, or they are not reading through the word, or they're just throwing letters together and hoping it makes sense. It's the same thing, but we're talking about the human body, the brain, and the nervous system. We have to build the skills. Now, does that mean that they're always going to do it? Let's be honest, Julie, I don't always do it.
I know.
Right? I don't always do it, but I do. When students come to the room, I'll say, and I model, I'll say things like, I know right now you may not see it on my face, but I'm feeling really, really frustrated. And it may not even be about what they've done. I'll just say, I just dealt with something that was really frustrating to me. Do you mind if I just take a minute before we have a conversation? Because I can feel that I'm really upset. And they're like, oh, yeah. They'll give me a minute, right? And then when they come in, I'll say, how you feeling? Oh, I'm in the red zone. I'm feeling so angry. Well, you know what? There's a beanbag over there. I got some fidgets. And I'll always say that this is my favorite one. If you want to see it, the more you play with it and the more you move your hands and move your body and connect your brain, you'll start feeling yourself calm down. And when you're ready, give me thumbs up and we'll figure out what the problem was and how we can solve it. And kids get it. They get it.
You know what, Matthew? You made me think of 20 things I wrote down, and this is what the problem when two people with ADHD meet. But I'm going to say one thing.
Yeah, please.
I'm going to say one thing to start. You're going to bleep me out later. You're going to fire me and never ask me back. But let me say it, and then let me take it back and tell you what I mean.
Got it.
You're talking to me about building relationships sufficient enough to buffer stress, not just because we're neurobiologically wired in our blue, I call it blue, but because in the book it's blue, limbic brain.
Yeah.
We have to intentionally build relationships with students because it's the most powerful pathway to buffer stress. Now, let me tell you what's going to get me fired. We are all drug dealers. And I'm going to redefine what drug dealership is. I want to redefine it today in this podcast. It is giving ourselves and kids and students and others doses of relational connection sufficient enough to release the chemical oxytocin, which buffers people's stress. It helps their limbic emotional brain calm because it's like, you see me, you care about me, and it buffers stress significantly. So I feel empathy for teachers because when we use punishment, blaming, shaming, criticizing, exclusionary discipline practices, is because we feel out of control. But Dr. Bruce Perry says the systems are not designed to raise humane beings and the ratios are not sufficient. So when I train teachers, I'm like, when they say to me, this is hard with 30 kids, I say, I invite you to just think about one thing you can do to take away, to put in your sandbox. And let me give you 1,000, but take one so you don't feel overwhelmed. And Matthew, I'm going to say one more thing with this drug dealer line thing that we're going to redefine today. That, it is the tone of our voice, because our primitive brain, when we are scanning for danger and deciding whether we're safe with you, our primitive brain is wired, our hind survival brain is wired like babies, to listen to the tone of people's voice and their facial expressions to decide whether we're safe with that teacher. And that is one small thing we can do. And also, all the trauma experts say that if you extend the ends of your words, and it doesn't look like this, hello, it looks like this, what happened?
Mm-hmm.
There's something about extending the ends of your words that immediately regulates the vagal nerve, or the 10th cranial nerve that runs through your autonomic nervous system to promote calm. So slower voice tones, calmer voice tones, and facial expressions is one thing we have power to do.
Again, like, this is why when we have conversations that can last forever, because again, what you said is so powerful, and it made me go to our book, Reducing Stress in Schools, because you said exactly something that I really wanted part of the book, and it is literally in chapter 1, and it is, I think, on like the second page of chapter 1. And it was the experience that I had with a student who I thought she was engaging in something in the front office. I thought she was actually going to hit another child. And I raised my voice and I called the child's name. And immediately I saw she went into full on freeze. Her stress response was, I'm not only in danger, but I'm about to get hurt. And I'll never forget it, because it was visual. You could see it. It was also relational, because I could feel it. I knew that what I had done was harmed her in a way, not physically, but her psychological
feelings. It jarred her. Yep.
That's exactly right. And so that can also be the case when we talk about how we engage students, how we talk to students, how we connect to students, right? We can inadvertently and not on purpose have a negative impact. And when we do, because it's going to happen, it happens to me, myself as a parent, it happens to me as a principal to adults, and it happens to me as a principal to children. And sometimes it happens to me as a principal to the parents and community. It happens. And I think the key that what we have to understand is those things are happening. That's part of the human condition. I could be stressed, whatever it is. It doesn't really matter. It's that, what do we do when it happens, right? And that repair is so stinking important that the student that I was talking to, and it's right here in it, this is the actual letter, right?
I show that on my slides and all my training, that story you tell. Yep.
Yeah. And I knew I had harmed. So I brought the student in and I said, I am so sorry that I could tell that when I did that, it scared you, and that I was actually wrong. She wasn't actually going to harm another student. I'd misinterpreted it. And so I said, I'm so sorry. And I said, will you forgive me? Well, I shouldn't have said that to begin with, because it's not about it. I should just say sorry. But I did say that. And she said, I don't know. I'll think about it. And I thought, man, sounds like my spouse. But she did. And I gave her space. And I said, I respect that. I'll check back later with you and see what you're thinking. A couple hours later, I did. I checked in on her in the classroom. I said, hey, come here quick. I said, you think about it? I just want to check back in, make sure you're okay. And she said, yes, I left you a note in your mailbox. And it did say, I accept your apology.
Tell them the picture. They can see it.
Right? It's
I
right there.
accept your apology.
That's it. Right. There it is. And we make mistakes. And I want educators, I want anybody, parents, anybody. We make mistakes. And here's the thing.
Making repairs, not having a perfect relationship. That's what strengthens relationships. Yep.
That's it. And it's also about those positive what Dr. Bruce Perry talks about too, those micro positive interactions in high doses, how much of an impact that can make when this happens in that emotional bank account, and how we can reconnect and say, because we have relationship, we can say sorry. And the children can process, or the other human can process and really say, oh, I see. Okay. That connective tissue to me has always become stronger. And I see the I'm sorry's and the modeling from adults. It seems to me in the last decade, it's gotten more complicated and harder.
Yeah.
And to me, that's directly associated with the increase of stress in schools. Is
Yes.
that when we have extremely stressed adults, we know Oberle in 2016 did the study where they checked the cortisol levels of students in classes and the self-reporting of stress in teachers. And there was a correlation, not causation. I don't remember correlation or anyway, there was a direct connection between the two. And I think the more that stress that educators feel, and it's real and it's valid, and I understand why, the more we're seeing this push of students is in that same space, because we do have to model. And I will tell every educator, it is hard work. That is doable. It's hard work. Two things can be true at the same time.
Yeah.
Is that we can work ourselves on how do we do these same things we want students to do, and practice them over and over and over. Now,
it's repetition. Yep.
It is. And to get, and I tell people all the time, and this is true, I don't get shaken very easily at school. I just don't. And unfortunately, I don't know if this is a flaw or not, I don't take things personal either. When kids are upset and they say unkind things to me, I know it doesn't really have to do with me. And therefore, I don't take it personally. So I can stay regulated and help them continue through the process of their own emotions while saying, I understand why you're frustrated.
Yeah.
I would be frustrated too. You know what? Sometimes I get angry too. And having that connective piece of letting kids be seen and heard. And again, two things can be true. I can see that and also let them know that punching another kid is just not, that's not.
Yeah.
That's
in our school, we don't hurt others, ourselves, or things around us. And we're here to keep everybody safe. Let's help you find pathways to communicate those feelings. But what I love about what you said is embodying, number one, we're not here to achieve perfect relationships, and we're not here to carry ourselves as if we are the end all be all. When you show that vulnerability as a teacher, when you make repairs, that's really the key to strengthening relationships. But there's so many other things that you are talking about is in our next book that's coming out. I can't even remember when it's coming out. It's Tier 3, culturally responsive Tier 3 practices for elementary educators. Mm-hmm. Wow. This is where you get the kids who have the persistent, challenging behaviors. And we have to remember that if we make a New Year's resolution on January 1st and we go to the gym, we don't run a marathon right away. We don't run 6 miles right away. Helping kids who are trauma impacted rewire their nervous systems to feel safer takes repetition and patience over time. Growing a humane being takes time, and it includes something you said earlier, which is the homeschool connection. But in our upcoming book that comes out, I can't remember when, January maybe?
I think it's the fall.
In the fall, there's a couple things, Matthew, teaching kids about the brain and, highlighting a little bit of this book that we talked about, but other strategies to teach kids about the brain. But another thing we bring in that I really love are our wait a minutes. A wait a minute is what teachers, educators, principals, you say when we feel powerless and out of control. It's like, wait a minute, this is spoiling kids. Wait a minute, rules are rules. Kids who break them need to be punished. But wait a minute, this calming area, everyone's going to want to go and I won't be able to teach. So we really make visible the neuroscience behind why we use these strategies, not just use these strategies. So I just did want to mention that.
Yeah. And I think too, the power of both of our books, to be quite honest, that we have had the pleasure of being a part of, is that we're using real live experiences, situations, scenarios that aren't that we've experienced, and how that when we utilize these type of strategies and mindsets, that the impact. And I cannot wait, because he is going to come on here. Kaylin is going to be on this on this podcast. And let me tell you, he was supposed to come by last Friday. His mom texted me, and we had a time during the day, and he's in college, so he had the time to come. And something happened, they couldn't, so they were supposed to come the end today, and then they had a schedule change. And so I cannot wait till people hear from him as a
this is your student that you just shared us with us about.
This is, yeah, this is
Wow.
Kaylin is in our new book. And I told him, man, you've changed my life. And I think that sometimes we have to give kids the credit that they're due, that your impact on my life is probably greater than what you think mine is on yours. Because, you know, I experience it all the time where people base kids and their whole being as an experience they've had when they are upset.
Yeah.
And Kaylin's situation, and I put it in the book, he was described as the worst kid I've ever experienced by the principal before me.
Wow.
And what people don't realize is when people tell me that, I'm like, yes, one of my kids. Like,
you're determined.
Bring them on. And he disproved everybody that thought he couldn't.
Wow.
And it was hard. It was rough. We went through times where it was like, I do call kids dudes sometimes. I don't know if that's appropriate.
I do too. I was going to do it in the podcast. I'd be like, oh, dude, that is so amazing. But then I'm like, I shouldn't say it.
No, I still do. I still call kids. I'm like, dude, man, that was intense. Like
You must be my age. That's why.
It must be my age as well. But I did. I call him dude. And, you know, the fact that he's graduated high school, he is in college, he is trying to increase his GPA so he can play college football. Like, the fact that he's thriving and in the midst of his mom having a brain tumor and all of these life experiences, he's thriving. And yet, if you judged him off of when he was 9, and unfortunately, the way that our systems are designed is that the trajectory of kids and their prospected outcomes starts in pre-K.
Yeah.
That pipeline opens very, very quickly. And people, once a student is tagged, it's true, they can stay tagged for a really long time.
Yeah.
And it's so exhausting and frustrating when I can look at a kid and think, man, you're brilliant in so many ways. And trying to convince I've got a student right now that he can cause a ruckus like none other. But he comes to me and we talk and I'm like, man, you are brilliant. You're brilliant.
The beauty of it is seeing the beauty and the strength. In one of the slides we do in our training, I talk about how we have to see behavior, dysregulated behavior, as a strength, especially for trauma impacted kids, because they learned that strategy to survive and cope. And now they're bringing it to school and it's being labeled as disruptive. It's like, what the heck? I had to use this in my home or my life or my community to survive. And so when we reframe the behavior, that's why you and I, before we got online here, we were offline talking before, we got to create systems, you said. And you want to know something? I got called out to a school that serves kids that left juvenile hall to go to this school. And they wanted to become trauma responsive. And you want to know something really interesting when we're talking about systems and culture is it didn't matter how much I taught them about strategies to use with children to start. You want to know what shifted the culture is creating training on individual and collective self-awareness and self-care. Then the teachers and the educators stress reduced and the relationships built. And all of a sudden they were like, we don't know what's going on, but it feels like the kids' behavior is not as much dysregulated anymore. And it's because I didn't know which way to come at it, but the way that the Velcro that they chose, the strategies with the kids was Teflon, because every point of entry is different, but the strategies that stuck like Velcro were teach me about managing my own stress. And you want to know, stress is contagious, calm is contagious. You said that earlier. So we don't know what the point of entry is for schools. Today, the listeners are going to take either something away that they can do or something they can bring back to their school to begin to change systems.
You know, when I was in that time frame between when I left the last principalship and this one, I was doing consulting as well. And I remember working with schools and districts, and they would begin telling me about their students, and they would say things like disruptive, unmotivated. They would say all these things, and I would say, that's great. Tell me about your staff. And they would look at me and I'd say, tell me about your staff. Connected, motivated. And they would just kind of say, and I'd say, it's a mirror. It's a mirror. If we have toxic adult environments, and I mean that on every level, right? Whether it's from the administrator down, whether it's from the school or from the teachers, it doesn't matter. That we cannot expect our students to be able to meet expectations our adults are unable or can't. And I do believe that sometimes it isn't that it's because they want to. It's because it is what it is, or it has been what it's always been, or it could be a capacity thing. And I will tell you, capacity is a really, really integral part of a school. And every year we know, and it was actually research done on brand new teachers, but there is a notable climb and decline of culture in schools and mindsets based off of the time of year. We know that. And there's been joking articles called one was written called Devolson, the deep evil vortex of September, October, November, and December, right? Because it's that meat of the year where, man, it's tiring. Yeah. Right. That's where the rubber hits the road. That's where you really find out how connected is the staff. Right. And even this last year, we did a retreat where it was a 3-day retreat, and it was a great experience. It had nothing to do with kids, nothing. It had everything to do with us. And we had an activity where it was about we all had sunflowers, and we know that sunflowers, when it gets dark or gloomy or the sun goes down, they lean on each other to hold the weight, right? And so it was so impactful. So I purchased little, crocheted. I don't know what they are. I did not do them myself, but I bought them off, the company that delivers things within 24 hours. And we started the sunflower. And that was where, when you were able to lean on somebody stepped in for you, somebody was there, that you got to present the sunflower. You took a picture. We used an app where we communicate. You shared it on that. And then I gave them a sunflower pin and a little sunflower clip for their ID. And it started this momentum of, you all, this is not something we can do on our own. And if you don't have a sunflower, and I would always I still do in my weekly updates, be someone's sunflower. Let them lean on you. If you feel the strength, let them lean. And if you need to lean on somebody who you can. Because at the end of the day, kids pick up on that. Kids know if adults like each other. Kids know if adults are not being kind to each other. Right. Kids know if adults are talking about each other.
That's right.
Because they tell me sometimes. It's true. Mr. Portell, did you know? I'm like, oh man. I got to have a conversation with some adults, because kids, they get it. They see it. They feel it. They know if we don't like them, and they know if we don't like each other. Yeah. They figure it out.
It's just like when you walk into a room and people are talking about you. And I think I always like to say that I ask people, have you ever ridden on the bumper cars? And the goal is to drive 100 miles an hour into your loved ones, and it's fun. And then you look for some stranger to crash into. Why does no one get hurt? Because of that huge bumper around the bumper car. And I tell adults, we need to build a big old bumper, because I know when I'm driving on the freeway and my bumper is deflated because I'm not doing enough to restore my energy, I will flip that person, chase them down, and then pray it wasn't somebody in one of my trauma trainings. But when I am restored, I always have more tolerance, more patience. If someone cuts me off on the freeway, I'm very different. I'm like, go ahead, sweetheart. We're all brothers and sisters in the world. And I'm kinder. So adults having collective care in schools and learning to buffer their stress. So when they come to school, because we know kids are picking up on their energy. But I know we're coming close to the end, and I want to really close. I want to close with one really powerful story.
Is that okay to do? Absolutely.
There was a child who'd been through 5 or 6 foster care placements. Every foster care placement, the foster parents would, can you pick him up? We don't want him anymore. And finally was adopted by 2 moms and enrolled in a early childhood program. And at drop off, it was a nightmare. And I asked the teachers why. Well, because he doesn't think they're going to come back. And Julie, you taught us that relational regulation is the most powerful. So let's use our relationship to go comfort him. And I said, relational regulation was not the pathway that comforted him. And I asked people why, because adults are not safe. Okay. Well, then we tried to use our calming areas and our reset spaces. You taught us about that. Why didn't that work, Julie? Well, let's guess why. Because for him, it's like being sent away and isolated. So we sat down with the moms and we sat down with the teachers and did what we have to do, which is push a pause button, because in the pause, we access our cortex. And when we're stressed, we don't access the thinking, reasoning, and problem solving. But we all sat and talked. And the moms came up with an idea. And they said, what if we give him the key to our house and tell him we can't get him without picking him up first, because he has the key to our house. I'm going to tell you, this kid kept it in his pocket and pulled it out 100,000 times. And it was the only thing in that moment for several weeks that helped him feel safe, until he started to sense the predictability, build connections with the teachers and with his peers. The point of entry could be a person, a place, an object, an activity. And we don't know what that is until we look past that shark fin of behavior to the beautiful goldfish underneath and say, there's got to be a way. And when you said the words, this principal before said this about this kid, and when I got him, I was like, I'm going to do it. We need cultures and people who have that value. So I wanted to close with that story because it's a powerful way to remember that there's always a pathway to help that nervous system feel safe. We just have to find it.
And I am convinced I would hug a porcupine. I'm convinced that
I'm convinced you would too.
Yeah. And I think that metaphorically is exactly what we sometimes do, is that understanding that every kid is different. Not one thing works on everybody. And except for, I will say, breathing on purpose, that does actually work on just most any human. However, it is a skill. But nothing ever works 100% of the time on everybody. And I think that in this work, what you just described is that, well, I tried it. Now I did that, right? And we have to be in that space that it's not going to 100%. It's not going to work 100% of the time. And at the end of the day,
strategy is not going to work.
Not at all. Peace corners are not going to work if you just put a peace corner. And, my previous school was highlighted internationally for our peace corners. And I will tell you, that doesn't work by itself unless you teach kids to be able to identify their emotions. And when they identify the emotion, know what to do with it, and then provide a space to do it. And guess what? Some kids don't want to go to the peace corner because they felt it was way too, people were looking at them. So we gave them an alternative space. It was just outside the door. Some kids, we ended up being what we had a Be Well room where kids could leave the entire environment voluntarily and advocating for themselves, and teachers would not tell them, no, I need to go to Be Well. Great. They would go, they would breathe, they would bounce, they would jump, they would roll, they would whatever it is they needed, the tool they needed to get themselves regulated or co-regulated. There was always an adult. And then they would go back. And I remember the fear of, well, they're just going to take advantage of it. And then, so what do? We tracked the data, and it was 3 to 5 minutes max. That's all the kids needed. They didn't need 45 minutes. It wasn't recess. It was literally, I got to go take care of myself. I don't feel okay. They would go, come back. And I would tell teachers, either we're going to give them 3 to 5 minutes or they're going to take 45 of yours in the classroom. Which one would you rather give up?
And that's why I wrote this children's book, because we have to simultaneously, when they're calm, teach them and practice with them what to do when they have an emotional emergency, so they can be their own first responder in times of stress. And I'm telling you, it works. And putting Band-Aids on things is different, but proactively teaching kids how to get a PhD in themselves, how to cultivate self-awareness, how to be aware of their brain, and how to build a toolkit of strategies to calm. That's what's life-changing, and that's what kids carry with them everywhere they go in the world.
And forever. Nobody can take it. Nobody can take it from them. And that is something I feel blessed to have been part of this work, because it's changed me. It has changed me. and how I operate in the world. And I'm definitely much happier. Doesn't mean I'm not less tired. I'm just much happier in doing the work. And it's why I chose to come back to it. I didn't have to. I could have kept consulting, but you know where your heart is, and sometimes you follow it, which is why I'm a principal again, because I know this is exactly what I should be doing. So my last question to you is the last one that I asked everyone. And what do you encourage people to go do that's disruptive for good?
Dang. Okay. I guess I guess I have to model what I said earlier, which is every nervous system is different. The risk we're willing to take in the moment. I'll never forget. My mom told me every day when I was growing up, you need to make your bed. You need to make your bed. And I went away to college and my friend said to me, you know, you don't need to make your bed anymore. And I was like, what? And I've not made my bed ever since. And so the thing I'm going to tell you right now is that we all have wired in us certain values, perceptions, and beliefs. And to ask somebody to let go of one of those and add something new is disruptive in and of itself. So I would encourage people to listen to all your podcasts or read a book or read one of our books or any book that is going to disrupt your values, perceptions, and beliefs, and just let go of one little thing. Take it on. And to me, that's being disruptive.
I love that. And I agree 100%. It doesn't take, you don't have to be a rebel rouser like I have been most of my life. You can just push a paradigm. And at the end of the day, that's what I'm going to encourage you to do. Do this. This is all I want you to do. I want you to go out in the world and do something disruptive for good.